Aliso Viejo along with their two cats. While they share the house, they do not share the master walk-in closet. So what's new? That is strictly her domain. At last count, catch this, will you? She had 216 pair of shoes. They're gonna call her a milliner. This is her third speech, and it was written in response to a dare from her husband. This project is Get to the Point, so I will get to the point by introducing her and giving you her title, which is Soul, S-O-L-E, Searching. Vivian Miller.
Thank you for that very well-written introduction, Phil. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, Mr. Toastmaster of the day, and also welcome to our guest. As Phil mentioned in my introduction, this speech was really written in response to a dare from my husband, Shane. It was last week, and I said, oh my gosh, I have to do a speech next Monday, and I had not followed Clement's advice and had anything prepared, of course. So I'm sitting down talking with Shane, and I say, what should I talk about? He said, what do you love? I said, shoes. I said, you can't talk about shoes for 5 to 7 minutes. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I say to Shane, I will be talking about shoes for 5 to 7 minutes. An obsession is defined as a consumption with a belief or desire. And there are all sorts of things that people get obsessed with. Some people might be obsessed with a hobby, like cooking or maybe photography. Others might be obsessed with a sport or a favorite sports team. Shane is obsessed with the Lakers. He never misses a game. Still others might be obsessed with maybe a favorite rock band like U2 or Coldplay. And me, obviously you can tell I'm obsessed with shoes. My love for fancy footwear really started at a very, very young age. I think that the first time that I can remember being absolutely taken in by a pair of shoes was probably when I was about 7 years old. And at that time, I was also obsessed with watching The Wizard of Oz, which, quite funnily, was actually on TV last night, so I watched about the last 15 minutes and got inspired all over again. And my parents and I were out shopping one day, and we saw, lo and behold, this pair of red ruby slippers that were just like the ones that Dorothy wore. And luckily for me, my mom bought them for me. I love those shoes so much. I mean, I literally wore them every single day. And I would gallivant and prance around the house in them. And of course, being like Dorothy, I would stand there and I would practice and I would click my heels together 3 times, of course. And I would say to myself, I'd close my eyes and I'd say, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. I'm telling you, those shoes were magical. They really were. I was Dorothy. I was Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz when I put those shoes on. Throughout the later years of my life, my love for shoes continued to grow, as did the height of my heels. Until they finally culminated in an obsession with the epitome of fancy footwear and one of man's greatest inventions, I think, the stiletto.
One of the worst.
The stiletto. Where did this shoe come from? Now, of course, I hadn't done a whole lot of research, but I just knew that the shoe was invented by a man. Sure enough, it was. And actually, the word stiletto comes from the Latin word stylus, meaning a stake or a pointed instrument, which I'm sure it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why that shoe was named after that. It seems quite appropriate. The diameter of a stiletto originally was defined to be a shoe with a pointed heel at the ground of less than 1 centimeter or about ½ an inch. So as you can see, these shoes definitely fit the bill. The shape of this particular shoe is actually what you would call a classic stiletto, which is with the pointed heel and also with the pointed toe for ultimate comfort, of course. Now, if you think about it, at that time, the stiletto, the invention of the stiletto, was really a pretty remarkable feat of engineering and technology. Up until that time, shoes were clunky. They had clunky heels. They were made from wood or other weaker materials that called for that wider heel for stability. With the invention of the stiletto, they were actually made with a solid steel or alloy rod that was embedded into the heel to give you that stability and ability to walk on a very small tip. Nowadays, the stilettos that are mass-produced are mostly made from a molded plastic that have an internal metal rod inside them for reinforcement. Visually, the stiletto offers an optical illusion of a longer, slimmer leg, smaller feet, and overall greater height. Now I ask you, what is not to love about a shoe that does all that for you? Like I said, the magic. Now the early stilettos, actually, the first documented picture of a stiletto was somewhere around 4000 BC, so that's over 6,000 years ago. And at that time, the Egyptian butchers actually wore them to keep their feet elevated, so that their feet would not get mucked up from all the blood and gore that would accumulate on the ground. The stiletto wouldn't make another comeback until 1533, when Catherine de' Medici actually wore a pair in her wedding to Prince Henry II of France. She was a very petite girl and actually not very pretty. And so she was raised by the Pope, and he wanted her to appear taller in the hopes that that would make her more attractive to her future husband. So she actually wore a pair of stilettos that made her 2 inches taller. In modern times, the stiletto didn't really make a big comeback until the 1950s, when Roger Vivier debuted a pair for Christian Dior in the House of Dior at a fashion show in Paris. But this time, they were obviously designed for a different reason: to elongate a woman's legs. He also designed the shoe in response to the sentiments of the time of the women who were sick and tired of the fashions that came out of the Depression era. They were clunky, they were utilitarian, they weren't really very attractive, and they were wanting something that was a little bit more feminine. In the 1970s is when the stiletto really gained popularity, and that was when a young shoe designer named Manolo Blahnik came out with his new shoe that he called the Needle. But of course, it really wasn't until the early 2000s when, of course, Carrie Bradshaw and the hit TV show Sex and the City made Blahnik a household name, and the popularity of the stiletto really, really took off. Now, a lot of times I get people who ask me, how do you wear those shoes? Those don't look comfortable at all. I have no idea. I would never be able to walk in those. And I say to them, well, you know, just like a mountain bike enthusiast would never dream of going for a ride without the proper helmet and gloves and other riding gear, I don't try to navigate these shoes without the proper equipment either. There are all sorts of tricks out there to help make these shoes more comfortable. There's gel pads that you can actually slip right into the shoe itself to give you that extra cushioning on the balls of your feet and on the heel. These are actually really great. These are for strappy shoes. They're thin cushion straps that you can actually put onto the straps to keep them from cutting into your foot. This is a cushion tape that you can customize to put anywhere in the shoe that's rubbing you the wrong way. And they even make this great, it looks like a glue stick, but what it does is you can rub it on your foot in the places where your shoe is rubbing you. So as you can see, there's all sorts of tricks to make these shoes a little bit more bearable. I wouldn't want to run a mile in them, but they certainly become a little bit more comfortable than they look. So I learned early on the transformative nature of the right pair of shoes. They allow me to express all of the different sides of my personality. I can be girly and feminine one day, edgy and sophisticated the next. Also, it's impossible to slouch when you're wearing a pair of 4-inch heels. So they teach you to stand tall, straight, and confident. And I think Terry de Havilland, who's a UK shoe designer, summed it up best when he said about stilettos: people say they're bad for the feet, but good for the mind. What's more important? And I think that all of you know what my answer is. Thank you for your gracious time today and for allowing me to indulge in my obsession.
How to get the feet.